Hi everyone. So I was just in the middle of introducing London Bhartiya Women Alliance, but we are a new social mobility organization that is focused on empowering Indian women in the UK, and we aim to do that through three main channels. First of all, we have our Breaking Barriers series, where we provide women with the stage to share their experience and advice to the coming generation of Indian working women in London. And next up, we have our mentorship scheme, which is something we'll be releasing in the summer. So if you're a penultimate year student or a final year student who'll be applying for internship and graduate roles in the UK, this is something that you can really benefit from. And last but not the least, we have a lot of networking opportunities and multiple networking events coming up, which will basically be a safe space for everyone, for Indian women to network with each other in a relaxed environment. But with introductions out of the way, I'd like to give a warm welcome to our speaker of the day, Sparsh Sehgal. Sparsh is currently a senior strategy associate at Entain and also the founder of Unlock Consultancy, which is an upskilling startup helping students figure out uh, what career will be the most meaningful for them. And at the same time, a startup that provides pro bono consulting services to underrepresented businesses from all over the world. And prior to joining Entain, Sparsh was an investment banking analyst at Deutsche Bank. And before that, she graduated from King's College London in 2020 with a Bachelor's of Science in Business Management from KCL. And I'd like to keep the introduction a bit brief because we'd like to hear it from Sparsh herself. So thank you so much for joining us, Sparsh. To kick off this interview, could you please introduce yourself and your journey from KCL to where you are right now?
Yeah, sure. Um, you've given a good brief, but I suppose I'll just add to that. I think I've been working not for very long now, but I've had this unique sort of blend of experiences in finance where I've had the opportunity to start my career in investment banking, moved on from there to go into a little bit more on corporate strategy. Um, my corporate strategy job that I do now also has elements of corporate venture capital. So it's a good mix of VC and strategy consulting, you can say. And then with Unlock, which is the startup that I founded in 2020 after I graduated, um, that obviously provides the much needed entrepreneurial flavor within all this mix of finance jobs. Um, and is very much direct exposure to consulting. So if there's people out there who need any particular advice in any fields of finance, but particularly if you're struggling to differentiate between where do I go, where do I sit, and so many things to do, I feel confused, then I feel like I've got a good repository of experiences to draw from.
Definitely. So thank you so much. And we'll delve into those experiences a bit more. But what does your average day, like starting from like right now in today's life, what does your average day at Entain look like? And could you touch upon the required skill that someone needs if they want to enter the same industry as you?
Yeah, sure. So look, a day in the life type of thing it really varies for me versus someone else would be doing the job because I have a lot more unlock work going in the background as well. So usually things look very different on a day-to-day basis if you work in corporate strategy or corporate ventures. So on a daily basis, you might be looking at certain assets, doing some basic valuation exercise or studying whether these are startups that you might want to invest in or not. So just for everyone's reference, Entain is actually a gaming company. And so we look at startups in the gaming, sports, entertainment, media world, everything exciting. So just looking at what things to invest in. Occasionally meetings with founders of these businesses. And then on the corporate strategy side, could be working on anything ranging from marketing of the business to finance to operational models and how to optimize them. So very interesting role where you get to do and see both sides of things.
Absolutely. And that definitely sounds very exciting and very unique. I was just wondering, like, what has been the best part for you for like working at Entain?
Uh, I think for anyone, looking for a job, jobs usually don't have any best parts. So, no, I think, look, the best part obviously is this blend. I don't think there are many roles out there where you get to do so many things, but also the progression has been pretty quick for me. I, went from associate to senior associate in a year. um, the kind of projects that I get to work on are not just things that you sit in front of a computer and you do. You have a lot more client interaction. You get to lead things. You get to put your opinions out there. And I think uh, usually people miss out when evaluating about their careers that a big part of jobs like consulting, banking, your hardcore finance jobs don't actually require you to think. They require you to be really, really smart, but they don't require you to think or have on a very basic level present a lot of opinions of your own. And I think the opportunity to do that
So we were you would so yes, so now you were talking about how you're getting to manage unlock even better. And I was just wondering, how does that work? How are you able to manage a full-time job and with your startup, and what have been some of the key takeaways from that?
yeah look, I think one is if you were really passionate about, and this is not finger in the air passionate, if you're really passionate about what you're doing, on both sides, right? One, you should have a very clear purpose of why you still want to do the job, more than the money for sure. And then two, you should have a real purpose to doing your startup as well. I think a lot of times these things fade or people leave because you don't really have that purpose. You're doing for the sake of doing something. And then when that something or that period ends, you sort of give that away. I think a lot of times, specifically in students' context, I see a lot of people, trying to do startups just for their, graduate applications or master's applications or things like that. So really one is, having the right purpose to why you're doing both things. For me, doing the job is important because it helps me learn. I think as a graduate, a month out of university, if you start a business and you say, oh, I know everything, that's not a very fair outlook, especially if it involves telling students how to think about their careers and how to think about, their career experiences before they step into that world. You obviously need to have a fair bit of experience yourself. um, so that's really important, like building that credibility with the job, which I constantly feel feeds into Unlock. And then with Unlock, um, I love doing what I'm doing. I love talking to students. I love sharing my experience, but I think it's a two-way cycle where you also keep learning from them. What is their perspective about this, which keeps adding to what you want to do at Unlock. So that two-way stream of feeding into how we are running the startup, but also how we're building the startup.
Definitely. And this is a question again that just came up. Now you're running a startup, so you're also leading a team. And I noticed through your social media pages that it's a very positive culture of giving credit when you should give it, and like giving like positive recognition to your interns and people who have full-time positions. So just from leading this team, like what are some key takeaways that you've taken from the last 2 to 3 years?
Look, having a team, uh, it's two very different perspectives. Like what you learn in your job is being an employee, right? And that for me, eventually, when I run a full-time business, being a business owner, I think that's a great perspective to have, because a lot of times entrepreneurs, when they become those big bosses, they don't really understand the mindset of the employees to a large extent. And I feel like being in those shoes has helped me to a certain extent build that out. And working with my team is amazing, because I think the only thing that keeps them here, specifically when you're at a startup stage, is that joint purpose. If they are really motivated to be here for any reason that they are here, but they're also enjoying it and they want to continue with me, then that's success for me, right? Anyone can come in and do a 2 3 month internship for the sake of it on their CV. And I think that's not the culture that I want to promote with Unlock when we are building it out. So my purpose is always how to make them feel a part of the team, but also help them learn and help them grow through this environment, which has given me the opportunity to just implement my skills as a leader, my skills as an entrepreneur, and how to build a business. And similarly, for anyone coming in, I want them to have that fair bit of experience as well, like not just being, for example, a graphic design intern, not just designing posts, but also having the opportunity to come up and talk about marketing ideas and what campaigns could we be running, and what um, offline things we could be doing to promote the brand, like all these things where when these students go into their jobs, they might not have the experience, but they might not have the opportunity to, get that experience upfront or have the opportunity to present their opinions, and giving people that freedom while also obviously recognizing them where credit is due is something really important.
Absolutely. I completely agree with that. And that's a very positive mindset to have as a leader. And I was just wondering, this leadership style of yours, do you think it has ever been influenced by any previous bosses, any good bosses, bad bosses?
I think, look, so banking, you never talk about your bosses because it's always everybody's under a lot of pressure. You will always hate your bosses. Where I work right now, my boss has a very good style of working. It's honestly amazing to see how there is that positive element of team building while also being in a very corporate structure. Um, and I think a great influence is also my own father. Like we have a family business back home. Day in day out since I've been a kid, I've not seen a very employee environment, right? You've only seen people making decisions at all times. So you know how big a responsibility that is. Even if right now I'm like really small, just at a startup stage, how that translates into a huge responsibility for everyone who's on board. Like tomorrow, if I don't feel like working, I can very well shut unlock and say, okay, bye. But now I know that I've got, employees on board. I've got people, even if that's interns and students who rely on this for their whatever, for their advancement, for their careers. Um, and that that actually really builds your leadership style.
Definitely.
So yeah, a couple of people for sure, my dad, and then I don't know. I guess I was just born with it.
I know.
Uh,
That's iconic.
yeah.
No, for sure. I mean, I just through this talk and even before this, I can see just how passionate you are about Unlock. And therefore, I'm now very excited to get to that part of the interview where we'll delve into your future plans and like the purpose behind Unlock. But just right now, what are some trends in the industry? It could be education industry or just small businesses in general that has been that has uh, been motivating you as a founder, and what future plans do you have for Unlock?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think on the student side, look, this is something day in, day out. It doesn't have to be a new trend. Day in, day out, people will be stressed about their jobs. People will be stressed about what's next. Some people from the perspective that they've never thought about it, some people from the perspective that they always think about it. And the more I interact with students, the more, you know, you see a trend, which is this commonality between students where everybody goes through the same stages, everybody wants the same things. And so it's less about how can I help you prepare for an interview, how can I get you a job. It's more, what I really want to break down is something that nobody is talking about, or really even discovering about themselves on the surface, that no student or company or recruiter ever gets into the depth of why someone is coming to you for a job, which kind of relates to the point that why somebody working at Unlock, right? There is, sure, after 2 months maybe you've satisfied what you need for your CV, maybe you've gained the skills that you came here to gain, you're definitely not earning as much money as you could earn elsewhere. So why are you here? That why is such a big commitment, such a big factor of what keeps them there. And I don't think any company out there is, or any student for that matter out there, is thinking about this why, right? Oh, I want to go into consulting, I want to go into banking. This why is such a big question mark that you just don't think about, even if the reason is, oh, because banking sounds cool, or oh, because I don't have any other option than consulting. And this why is a big theme of what we want to really build Unlock around. And I'm pretty sure there will be more things to come, but I think this is the direction where the future will go in terms of students. In terms of small businesses, that's a space that's always been exciting, and I think that's a space that always will be exciting, but specifically now, because post COVID, I think a lot of people have had this realization that they don't want to be employees, right? So you saw this sudden influx of a lot of people leaving their jobs, becoming entrepreneurs. Some work, some don't work. Then you saw this really grim period last 2 years where VC funding has really dried out, right? And so now you've got a lot of people who've started doing startups, but then also this big dearth of funding. You've got some startups that are really overvalued and some that are not. And if I specifically talk about, the pre-seed, seed level founders that we work with, a lot of times their focus is entirely how do I get funding, right? Whereas what we want to really help them do is how do you build a sustainable business? And I think that sustainability of business, whether that includes all these like new age factors that we need to account for, whether that's inclusivity, diversity, environmental ESG points. I think it's more about how sustainable your business is and how can we help you create that business model at the onset rather than even if you get successful funding, you have a 3-year runway where you're basically trying to make sense of things which you could have probably done before. So I think the why and sustainable business building are the two areas of focus.
Absolutely. And just to follow up with that, you talked about why, like finding your why, your ikigai. It's so, so important. But as a student, how should one go about finding that?
Yeah, see, that's something that you can't really just wake up and you say, why do I want to do this, right? I think there's things you need to do, steps you need to take, maybe in a more conscious way to start discovering that. And there's things you probably are doing, but without thinking that this is leading you to your why, right? So first is very important that you expose yourself to that career that you want to go into. So not just sitting in a classroom and saying, oh, I'm going to fill this company's application, but really getting out there, meeting the people who work at these big companies. And oftentimes I say people are lured to meet, let me go meet a VP or a senior or somebody whose title sounds interesting. The people you should really be meeting are the analysts, right? The really low, like lower ranked people who are just starting out, not lower ranked as in, the entry level people who have done a year, 2 years of this. Some of them love it. And I'm sure they have reasons now. They now know why they love it, right? And some of them hate it, and they now know why they hate it. And oftentimes, people only get to that point a couple of years into their jobs, right? We want to move that timeline. We want to say, okay, why don't you do this exercise 2 years before getting into your jobs? Today you meet me, I will tell you complete truth of this was the good of banking, this was the bad of banking. The way we expose students within Unlock is we show them both sides to things, right? This is the good of consulting, this is the bad of consulting, but really this is what consulting is by curating it into an experience that we provide, right? Within that experience, you can choose for yourself, I love it, or you can say, I actually don't like it, right? But without doing that experience, you really cannot make that decision or find a why. So it's really important, one way or the other, to get that actual experience, to meet those people and talk to them, to be mentored by them, right? Because you get to see their way of thinking. And then things like networking events, going to those companies, visiting the company is really important. Sometimes you just love a place. Like when I used to enter banks, I'd be like, this is home, this is where I want to be, like this is aspirational. And maybe sometimes you enter a place and you'd be like, just doesn't feel like me, right? People don't feel like me.
Right.
So all those things together, but like at the core of it, the experience really makes the difference.
Definitely. It's very important being proactive because you can't just sit there and it will come to you like an epiphany, like this is what I want to do. Thank you for sharing that. And really exciting all the things that you have done already with Unlock in the past year itself. But what are your future plans? I know that you have recently introduced Unlock Ventures. Would you like to touch upon that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So we, as you mentioned at the beginning, we work with students. We also work with startups, and we used to do all of this within the same bracket of consultancy. We don't really provide consultancy by the word of it for businesses because we do really more business building, business, models, for that business, helping them build out their prototype, whether that's an individual entrepreneur or an established business that needs help. And so it was more towards the boundaries of venture rather than anything to do with consulting. So Unlock Ventures is an incubation program to begin with, to really foster that whole thinking behind how do we help you build those sustainable operating models? How do we help you structure your thinking as an entrepreneur? We have now started off this year with three female-led businesses based out of India and UK, and then one more business out of India, not female-led, but we're not really bucketing ourselves into a particular whatever category. And it's really exciting. All of them come from, very exciting backgrounds, very exciting ideas. For me as well, taking my VC background into this and applying, those skills to actually help a business grow, like that would be a great test for me to see what have I learned can actually help a business. And, simultaneously, obviously, feeding it into the consultancy side.
Absolutely. And I had the privilege of working with one of the businesses through the Unlock Summer program. And it was definitely one of the most fulfilling experiences that I've experienced till now. Do you have any standout client projects that Unlock got to work with?
Yeah, I feel like lately I've been seeing so many of them. Everyone feels like this was great, and not just saying, oh, we do great work, but just the amount of effort that students actually put in. And I know that there is a sense of skepticism when maybe some clients come in or mentors come in to say, what can students do? I think students have been able to deliver such great projects, whether that's working with an individual entrepreneur or working with, established teams and taking that forward. I think some key ones for me, a lot of times I don't even know what's going on, with businesses, with the projects running. But I think some key ones are, we worked with this group of women entrepreneurs in from actually a village in India, and these were very homegrown businesses. Especially, if you're Indian, you'll understand, like making pickle at home, making condiments like papad and sweets at home. And there was this one lady who was doing that, and her husband was helping in whatever capacity he could, lived in a really small town. And what she wanted to do was build a female community around it who could come and sort of help her business, but also and get some kind of like revenue share out of it. But also empower the women community in that small town. And that was a really interesting business to work on. Like obviously, because everything we do is virtual. What I would love to do in the future is, visit businesses like this and actually be on ground to provide them some support. And that really makes you feel like there is some actual impact of what you're trying to do as well. Not just, which is why we removed it as consulting, because it feels very pretentious, feels very, in the air, like, oh, you say something and you never come back to it. I think what we do is really help you build it up, whether that involves, writing a few slides or actually giving ideas that can be built into something.
No, that sounds very impressive and definitely a great project to work with. And I also got to work with like a social ethics startup, so I can definitely see the type of clients that Unlock is trying to help, and I think it's doing a commendable job at that. And with that, I feel like we have now entered the last leg of our interview. And I'd just like to start this with a bit of a selfish question, that if there are women out there who are trying to start their own businesses or just uh, like a non-profit foundation or alliance, what advice would you have for them?
First of all, I would say there's plenty of support available at Unlock. So please, if you do have a business that, like you have started a new thing, don't, one, as women, we try to discount ourselves quite a lot. Like even if you're like, oh, I will never do that. I feel like I've also done that to a certain extent, where in the initial years we discount a lot. Like maybe this is not something that's can be called a business. Maybe this is not big enough, right? So first, know that whatever you're doing is good enough and is legitimate and is worth having that spotlight. And then two, come to us. Like it's all, it's all made, the whole ecosystem is made to help entrepreneurs and businesses like yours. So if you're an entrepreneur, whether you're female or not, please come to us and just have a chat about what support you can get to just build out a business or get some mentorship or advisory, anything, and we'd be happy to do that.
Definitely. No, thank you so much for suggesting that. Um, do you think that alliances like us can approach Unlock
Oh,
as
for
well?
sure.
Oh, that's
Absolutely.
great. And now, just for general advice for mainly for female students, to be honest, for example, who are completing their
Yeah.
undergraduate or postgraduate degrees, what advice do you have for them?
Look, my biggest advice to any student, and specifically if you're, targeting this Indian community, um, would be we're all international students, so we really need to be mindful of what our next steps are. And if that involves going into a career, make sure you're building the right support system around it, whether that involves, meeting the right people, networking with professionals out there, knowing like-minded people at university like yourself to have them in your vicinity. It's so important to utilize this time as students to start building that community, because often people don't, and this is something which comes to the first thing that we discussed, like how does that transition look like from uni to your career. And you don't realize how big of a black hole you get into when you get into your careers, because you're literally seeing the same people day in day out. You probably don't have the time or energy to go out of your way to meet new people. And so university is such a great time and place to utilize that networking element, whether that means just signing up to 3 events at King's or whatever university people are at, meeting the alumni. People love to connect with, students from their university. Like if someone from King's reaches out, that's a very personal connection to myself rather than, to a certain extent, other universities. So alumni are always very helpful. And don't be afraid to like text people, like cold message people on LinkedIn. When you hear someone at a talk, just like don't be afraid to send them a connection request and say, hey, loved hearing you at XYZ event. Would you be free to, grab a coffee with me? And you're a student, you're way more flexible to say, I'll come meet you outside your office, right? Just let me know whatever half an hour suits you. People will never say no. So just like go hardcore on building that community for yourself, building that network for yourself, whatever you want to call it. And you never know, sometimes your best friends come out of that, sometimes your really close connections come out of that, and sometimes when you're just simply trying to do something else in life later, maybe a couple of years into your careers, these people could be very helpful.
Definitely. I really appreciate your advice on networking, because I feel like, for example, for me, this semester is very chill compared to the last one. So maybe the time that I have, I can invest it
For
in
sure.
proactively building
Yep.
my network.
Yeah.
But great advice as always. And thank you so much again for sharing your experience with us and your advice. It has been great. We just had a couple of questions, like two questions from our Instagram community. So first, they were asking, would you ever consider going full time with Unlock?
Oh yeah, for sure. Like sooner than later. Yeah.
Definitely. That's great to hear. And since you are also involved in the venture capital industry, if someone wants to go into the venture capital industry right after their undergraduate, do you think that is feasible, or maybe after doing like a finance job first, or that's what?
Yeah, so VC is a tricky environment, right? Either you've done literally everything VC related in your university, whether that's societies, internships, projects, whatever, and then you have a very easy in, at entry level. Or, for example, in my own experience, even after a couple of years of experience at banking, it was really hard to transition to VC because they're very particular about people that they hire. It's not as straightforward, I would say, as any other finance job that I've gone into. So if you really want to be in VC, think about things you can already do at university, because if you're proactive, if you go into the early starter program, something like that beforehand, you have a much higher chance than even people coming in with 2 to 3 years of any other finance experience.
I see.
Yep.
I did not know that. And thank you so much for sharing. And yes, those were the questions that we had from our Instagram community.
Amazing.
Thank you so much for joining us. And thank you so much to our London Bhartiya Women Alliance community as well. And we will be introducing a lot of events in the coming week with speakers from diverse industries. So thank you so much and have a good night.